You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 216, How to Get Over Your Breakup in Your 60s. It's a Golden Bachelor edition, my friends. So excited. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Welcome, Braveheart. I'm so excited you're here to listen to the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast. This is the Netflix of breakups, short, powerful, and actionable episodes that help you along your breakup journey. If you're interested in a more hands-on approach, I'd love to invite you to check out our free on-demand video training called How to Fast Forward Getting Over Your Ex Without Wasting Months or Years Feeling Jealous, Angry, or Unlovable. You'll learn how to stop letting your ex live rent-free in your mind, even if you want to get back together later, how to absolutely be sure that your life will be better than the one that you had with your ex post-breakup without it taking time, and lastly, the secret to feeling completely neutral about your ex without having to go no contact. Grab it for free at breakupcoachdorothy.com. Let's begin the episode. Hello, beautiful Bravehearts. How is everyone doing today? I'm so excited. I have an amazing guest, Stephanie, here with me today. She was recently inside of the Get Over Your Ex program, and we're going to talk all about her experience. I am so pumped, Stephanie, to have you on the podcast. Would you please go ahead, give yourself a little bit of an introduction, share with us who you are, where you are, how did your breakup journey start? Tell us everything.
Sure. Well, first, I'm just thrilled to be here. Super excited and honored. I am 62 years old. I'll lead with that. I live in Florida on the East Coast in an area they call the Treasure Coast. I have two amazing young adult children. And what brought me to the program initially was a breakup that happened late March of this year. We had been together for over 9 years and had lived together for about the last 5 of those. And we weren't married, but we did consider ourselves at one time to be very committed to each other. And we even wore rings to symbolize that commitment. And that relationship started very shortly after my divorce from my children's father, who I'd been married to for 22 years. And I didn't really fully grasp the significance of that fact for me until I started the healing journey and learned more, from this recent breakup. So that's why I mentioned that. My current ex was significantly younger than me, which wasn't really super relevant for us for most of the relationship, but I do mention it now because of some of the things I made the breakup mean about me and my life moving forward that I now have a totally different viewpoint on. But anyway, at the beginning of our relationship, I think we were both like a super awesome distraction for each other. We were both going through some life changes. And I honestly don't think either one of us at that point realized or thought that we would last as long as we did, or that we would really fall as deeply in love as we did. A lot of dynamics came into play over time as we became more serious. And like in any long-term relationship, different thoughts and feelings arose that needed to be addressed in a healthy way in order for the relationship to really flourish. And I was so determined coming out of my marriage that I would not stay in a relationship moving forward where it wasn't okay to express anything to each other, and that both people were going to be committed to doing that in a kind and respectful way. And I lived with that awful feeling of walking on eggshells and losing myself and my voice in a relationship before, and I really did not want that to happen again. But for his own reasons, many more times than not, my attempts to bring things up that were important to me in the relationship were not well received by him. And as that started happening, at first I was really determined to show up in an assertive way. Or when I didn't, when I was reactive, I went off by myself and worked it through and came back and tried to own my reaction and really tried to explain myself better and just hope that I would be better understood by him. But he just didn't have the capacity at that time to be really willing to see or accept different perspectives or to not be reactionary himself. So there was just basically a lot of inconsistency on his part in that respect in the relationship, as well as some other areas. And over time, I would just get more triggered and reactionary myself. And I started focusing way too much on him and his thoughts and trying to change his thoughts and trying to make him happy. And I, lost myself again in that process. I have to say that there were many sweet, wonderful times with him during the relationship as well. So I tended to hold on to those and would just start to push my other concerns down to the point that, again, I allowed my voice and ultimately myself to get lost in that relationship. Prior to the breakup, I have to say, in all honesty, there were times when I questioned if this was the relationship for me or, the best thing for me. But I tend to be the kind of person who has the rose-colored glasses on a lot. I see the best in people, which I don't think is a bad thing altogether. But in a relationship at this point, I was much more focused on what I saw as his potential than what he was actually presenting to me. And I was making decisions based off of my ideal of him and not what was really happening in our lives. So I also think I just was like so holding on to that relationship so tightly because I was making the relationship mean a lot about me and my self-worth. So I just kind of didn't want to let it go for that reason. And I tend to love really hard. That's just how I am. So when he did, actually, he's the one that broke up with me. And even though I questioned the relationship at times, I was still totally devastated, in that moment, regardless of what had transpired over time. And so there was a lot of grief and sadness and pain, that happened in that process. So like I mentioned, that breakup happened in late March. And even before I found you, Dorothy, I did have the mindset that I didn't want to just get through it. I didn't want to just be over him and, check that box off and move on with my life. I really felt like this was an opportunity for me to heal and grow in a different way. So that's what I was looking for. And I did find some podcasts and contents, on breakups and relationships. And some of them I thought were, for me, kind of unhealthy. And some of them were decent. There was some good stuff that was helping me feel a little better. And at some point I ran across your podcast and I just immediately knew that it was very different. And I was so incredibly drawn to your approach to not just getting over your ex, but also how to transform yourself, so that you can create anything in the future you want. And I'm sure, like many listeners out there, I listened to every episode probably 3 times through. And that's not a joke. That's for real. And then I did the self-love week, and then I did the 5-day program. And at the end of the 5-day program, I made the decision. I'm like, I need to fully invest in myself. This is my time. And that's when I knew, that that's what I needed to do, which I joined in late June. So it was about 3 months after the breakup. And I graduated at the beginning of October. And as I thought, it did totally, absolutely change me in so many ways and transform my life. So that's how I got here.
So cool. Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. I want to know, how long were you walking on eggshells? I feel like there are so many listeners who are going to be like, I don't know. I had this visual in my mind when you were talking about the walking on eggshells, the thinking about him and what he's thinking and how can I make him happy. I think we all go through a phase of that at some point in our life of probably multiple times in our life, if we're being honest, probably multiple times we've done this where we're like making a relationship try to work that's not quote unquote working, but we want to put our all into it. And I think sometimes we really need to do that for ourselves. But how long was that process for you of walking on eggshells and trying to make things work for him? And I guess it really took him being the one that broke up with you. But how long was that process for? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was probably it was probably a lot longer than I hadn't really thought about that. So I would say probably over the first year to two, things were just easy breezy, having fun, you know, fun times. And then, like I said, as a relationship evolved, um, their conflicts came up or things had to be discussed. So his reaction in the beginning was not good, but in the beginning I stood my ground. I felt like that was important. But as time went on, that dissipated. We did actually at one point honest go see a therapist, and the therapist said all the things I knew, and I'm like, great, he's hearing it from someone else and not me. But in the moment, like, I needed to do my healing. He's got some healing to do, and he just his self-esteem and his reactions to any type of discussion about him that wasn't anything but happy was he just got blinders on. So regardless of his willingness in certain moments to do things in a different way, and I guess that's what I held on to. Oh, yeah, we got a plan, we're going to do it different, and maybe a time or two it worked that way, and then it just slid back into the other.
So I guess one of my questions, as you said that, Stephanie, is when you look back on that now, are you glad that you did those? Like, are you glad that you went through that? Would you do it differently? Like, tell us more about that, looking back on it now that you've kind of worked through so much of the relationship.
Right. That was an area I definitely had to do a lot of work on in terms of not having a ton of regret, all the would haves, like, what if I'd stood up for myself more? Would he have changed? Or would we have, broken up a lot earlier so that I could have moved on and, or all those things, as well as the piece of forgiving myself for having, lost my voice again when I was so sure that I wasn't going to do that. But I did, through all the work I did with you, realize that I do feel it happened 100% the way it was supposed to happen. And I've just decided I'm not going to regret being somebody who loves really hard and tries, and gives it my all, because that's how I'm made. And at least I know that I did everything that I feel that I could have done. So at the end of the day, it was just meant to happen the way that it did. And honestly, if we'd broken up, several years ago, it might have been before you even started your podcast, Dorothy. And who knows where I would have gone from there, or maybe just into another relationship where I wasn't healed enough to not repeat the same patterns. I do feel moving forward, I will handle things very differently, just because I'm such a different person now than I was then. So, but I'm not
So
going to go back
good.
and regret. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. Notice everyone how she said, I'm just going to decide, or I've already decided that I'm just not going to regret. It's a decision that she's committed to and that she practices. So I love that. I'm also very much the same way. I'm like, yeah, I went all in. Yay, me. Did it. Right?
Totally.
So good. I love that. Now, Stephanie, do you feel comfortable talking about your age? Can we talk about 62? Going through this at 62?
Yes.
Um, Tell me all the things that came up for you around 62 when it came to going through a breakup of 9 years. What were next steps? What about your bigger and better life? Maybe even like I hear from a lot of people is the program for me because I'm past 60. Tell me all the things that come up for you around age. I would love to chat about that.
That's an awesome question. And honestly, when I was first listening to all kinds of content around breakups, everybody was younger. Everything I was listening to, all the people that were going through the great breakups, all the people that were, coaching or what have you. And and especially when I would hear somebody in their 20s say, "Oh, I'm just so old now." I'm like, this is just not going to be for me, I don't think. And honestly, I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but when I did find you, one of the reasons that I connected with everything you had to offer, one was just because it resonates with me so much. And you are younger. You could be my daughter. But I also know your story and the things at that point that you had been through. And I'm like, damn, if she can, have that kind of heartbreak on a lot of different levels and different areas of her life and utilize all this to get through it and move through it in such a positive way, then the age was irrelevant to me.
That's
As far
amazing.
as,
I had
yeah,
no idea. Yeah, because I guess if you were with me yeah, you were with me for self-love week. And then you said you
yep,
did the 5-day training, which was also kind of during my big heartbreak of the miscarriage and everything I was going through with that. Yeah, that makes sense.
exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, and most things, even when somebody was a little older that I would find somewhere, they'd be like maybe in their late 40s, early 50s, which is closer, but not quite. And so, because of my age, and I think a little because of his in relation to mine, but even if I think we were the same age, some of the stories that I was telling myself in the beginning were that, I don't have much time left, that what's really out there for me. I went through a thing where I was like, he wouldn't have broken up with me if I wasn't, hadn't gone through these life changes or wasn't at this point in my life. I also went down the road of feeling like I'd wasted, that close to a decade with him. Because in the beginning of my 50s, when we got together, I was feeling like I was rocking it. I was feeling really good. I was feeling great about a lot of things, about the way I looked and the way I was, whatever, presenting myself at that time. So, in the midst of just the pain and grief of the heartbreak, I felt so much older and like I was just such a different person than I was then. And what I could have, would have, should have done, or what, all that stuff related to my age. And yeah, just kind of feeling like this is like the final phase. Had that in my head. Like there's just this little blip of time left. And what's the point anyway? I mean, there were a lot of things around age that I definitely were a struggle for me. And I had a lot of scary stories about in my
How did
head.
you, yeah, tell us how you overcame them. Like, where did you land on a lot of this stuff? Because I feel like anyone who's listening would love to know who is struggling with the age component, whether they're in their 20s, because we hear it in their 20s too, versus even if
Exactly.
they're in their 60s, 70s. Tell us like where you landed and how you overcame those stories.
I'd be happy to. Well, I overcame them through the coaching, really, and the program and all the different tools and mindsets and ways to look at life differently. But like, let's say on the subject of, maybe he broke up with me or he wouldn't have broken up with me if I'd been younger or wasn't this age or didn't look a certain way or have, whatever thoughts I was having. And I just came to fully realize that he broke up with me for reasons that had nothing to do with me, regardless of how old I am or young I am or what I look like or anything else. He broke up with me because of the thoughts in his head about himself and his life. And so that one was easy to let go of once I realized that. I mean, the breakup really did not have anything to do with me. So there was that piece. And then as far as like wasting that decade with him or what have you, we did a coaching on that. I don't know if you recall. And it really helped, we went through the thought models on it, but I just looked a lot at who was I 10 years ago and who am I now? And honestly, when I really looked at it from a different perspective, I love who I am even more now because I was awesome then for sure, but now I'm just that awesome and a lot more aware of things. I have a lot more tools. I have as much energy and vitality as I ever did. So, I wouldn't want to go back there. I want to be who I am now. So that's kind
So
of
good.
where I got on that
So
piece.
good.
The thing about the final phase, at one point, it really hit me. I was like, I spent so much time convincing him because I'm looking toward retirement and he was at a different point in life. I'm like, but oh, look at all the fun we can have and look at all this amazing time left and all the adventures and things we can do. But then he broke up with me and all of a sudden I'm feeling like, oh, I have no time left. I'm like, you were just trying to convince him of all this awesomeness to come. That is all still available for you. This is not an ending. It's a beginning and it's not even your final phase. It's just a chapter of many more chapters to come, hopefully. So
So
yeah, each of those
good.
things I just kind of did a lot of work around
Yeah,
changing
well,
my,
we coached a lot,
yeah,
right? I feel like the
100%.
coaching, you really took advantage of that. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then let's go ahead, let's dive in. I would love to know what was it that you struggled with most when it came to getting over your ex and building your bigger and better life? If you had to pick one.
Well, you hit a good one. So age was one, but other than that, I'd say probably the other big one for me was the first pillar of the program, which is feeling your feelings. Um, that I had some awareness was not a strong suit of mine, but until I really got into it, it was very eye-opening to me how much work I could use in that area and how much it would free me and change honestly my ability to handle things and just to be able to look and have different thoughts about things by not holding on to a lot of hard or heavy emotions. And I'd say, I mean, society as a whole, I think now is much more supportive of mental health and feeling your feelings and teaching children how to cope and all that, but certainly was not the fact in my era. And just certain circumstances of my childhood and young adulthood um, did not really support me being able to express fears and hard feelings. And then I got into two long relationships, the 22-year-old marriage and then a 9-year relationship immediately after with people that also just were not very receptive to hearing anything that was not light and breezy and easy. So I've had a lifetime of perfecting how to try try to suppress emotions because I think, yeah, obviously we both know you really can't, they don't just go away, but
We can
we can
try,
try.
but they do stay somewhere. They do
Yeah.
go somewhere.
Or either reacting at people for things that are not the thing that's the issue. I'm sure I know I've done that many times. And I think there's a lot that just stayed down in there. It's like so heavy that I wasn't aware. So when we started, doing some of the work around feeling those hard feelings, and it was just, like I said, very eye-opening to me and very just, I let go of so much. And the whole concept of welcoming hard emotions, something I never heard of. I'm like, well, that's no, I've spent my whole life like avoiding or not, nobody in my family, we don't talk about those things. So to say, yeah, come on in, pain, I welcome you. And I was like, wow, that was so comforting to me, that shift and just having a whole different relationship with my feelings and having all kinds of tools and ways now to process them in a healthy way that serves me.
I
So
loved that towards the end, one of the things that Stephanie told me that I thought was just like, it was kind of funny, but amazing at the same time, is she was like, I just can't wait to go home and feel my feelings. I'm so excited to feel feelings.
it's totally true. Even last night, because I'd had something kind of bubbling up, and I'm like, I know I'm doing this podcast today. Girls got to have a good processing time. And I did. And it felt so good. I welcome it. I love it. And it's still hard, but it just feels so good on the other side. I think that's what I love about it.
Yeah. And you don't have to be afraid of it anymore. I feel like you got rid of like the front end of just the fear of feeling feelings versus just learning how to feel your feelings. You get to skip like a huge piece of it. It's like when someone procrastinates something, like you spend maybe days procrastinating a 15-minute situation. And so it's the same thing with feeling your feelings, is maybe you're procrastinating or pushing away your emotions for days. But once you get comfortable feeling them, you can just spend 10 or 15 minutes feeling it, and then you skip the procrastination part. So it's amazing.
Yeah,
So good.
absolutely.
So tell us, that seemed like a really big turning point in the program. What other big turning points did you have when it came to your heart healing journey?
I would say, honestly, every time I was coached, I feel like was a turning point, really. And like you said, I made the decision going in. I was like, every opportunity I have, even if I don't know what I'm going to say, I'm just going to raise my hand so that I can get as much out there as I can. And so, and also hearing other people being coached, and the coaching in the community, all that, just there were so many aha moments all over the place, really. I would say, what else? Just, oh, well, one thing, speaking of procrastinating, but I knew this about myself a little bit, but some of the turning points were around certain um, pieces of work in the program that I procrastinated on, that I think I know that I did because they were going to bring up hard feelings. So it's before it kind of all came together, but even like the relationship evaluation, which is kind of a first piece, I just kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And finally, I'm like, you got to do it, girl. And it was emotional. And just having all that out there in front of me, helped me change my thinking on all kinds of things. So that was a turning point, as well as like rewriting the breakup story. They were just, I know when I get resistance around something, it's probably something I really need. So, once I get to do it, big things come from it. So those were definitely a couple of big changing moments for me. And let's see, I think also definitely just improving the relationship with myself was a big turning point. And I honestly, really, I have been so other focused for so long. I didn't even really think about the idea that you have a relationship with yourself. I was almost like a bystander in this drama that was happening. And so the whole just reconnecting with my higher power and reconnecting with my trust that I do hold deep inside, that everything is unfolding the way that it's supposed to, and having my own back, and really just standing up for myself in different ways. So that was a huge turning point for me as well.
I love that. And I bet it feels very different, like having a relationship with yourself when you have been a wife, a girlfriend, and a mother. Like you're so used to playing that role, which is almost like a sidekick role in someone else's life, to then turning it back on you after so many years. Almost, I don't want to use the word jarring, but it's like eye-opening, I'm assuming.
Totally. I'm so glad you said that. That's another pro, honestly, of my age, because, in the marriage, when you do have children and all that, everything's different. So your whole life is about taking care of those children. And I held on to that relationship so long because I did want our family to stay together. And then I went right from that when I entered into this last relationship, my son was out of the house, but my daughter was still in high school, maybe even middle school at that point. So she still really needed me a lot, and so between that and then him, this is the first time since my 20s that I still, of course, I'm very involved in my children's life. I'm very involved in my older parents' life. I have pets, all this stuff. I have a job that's demanding. And really, though, it's all about me now. And so that's an awesome thing. I think that's one of the yay 62 things, I think.
Love it. So good. Yay, 62. We were talking before we started recording, y'all, and I'm like, please go on The Golden Bachelor. So fun. I love it. Amazing. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about is really, what would you tell the version of you who was really in the thick of it? And I almost, to be quite honest, after talking, Stephanie, I'm really curious about what would you tell the version of you who's in the relationship still? And what would you tell the version of you who went through the breakup that you went through? Almost like two pieces.
Okay. I think first, to the version of me that was in the relationship, I would say, I know you're giving it your all. And I know that you love him very much and you love what you guys have had and what you have envisioned the future could look like. And it's okay to look and see what's in front of you right now. And you're hurting. And you're afraid to say it. And you're afraid of what it's going to mean. And you're afraid of where it could lead. But we're going to be okay. You're going to be okay, regardless of how this plays out. And if he is not the one and he's not in alignment with what's important to you, it's the right thing. And you're going to find yourself and you're going to find what your future is supposed to look like. So don't be so scared. Don't lose your voice. And yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Love that. I love that. And that's great for anyone to hear sometimes I know people are listening to the podcast before they're ever even going through a breakup. So for the listeners who are in the thick of a relationship and you really, really want it to work out, I just want you to hear that from Stephanie, because we're both here for you in that we understand that you're hurting. We understand that it's hard, and we understand that you're putting your all into it, and be proud of that no matter how it turns out. And it's going to be okay regardless. Just please know that it's going to be okay regardless. And you're an amazing human being. You're amazing at loving so hard. And that is not something to be mad at yourself about, but to really love in yourself. So
no shame in that at all.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. Would have been, I would have loved to heard that when I was.
Yeah.
As far as the me, in the breakup, I think I would want that version of me to know that I know you're hurting, and letting go is really hard for you. But you're not only going to get through this, but ultimately you're going to thrive on the other side. And all the feelings you're feeling right now, they're totally normal. But you're going to learn how to welcome those feelings, and you're going to learn how to process them in ways you didn't even know existed before. And all of this is just going to bring you so much peace and change the trajectory of your life, really moving forward so dramatically. And you're going to feel brighter and freer. And you just have an unlimited future in front of you with who you are and who you're becoming. So hang in there. It's all worth it. And it's all happening for a reason. Yeah.
I feel like that when you said those kind of back to back, I just feel like there's an adventurous spirit component to the second one, where it's this is about to be one of your most epic adventures, and you're 62. How cool is that? I'm obsessed with that. I think that is mind-blowing and epic. And I'm just like really excited for those individuals out there in their 60s or 70s to hear this episode because it's such an adventure. It can still be an adventure and it can be epic and amazing and bigger and better than you would ever even imagined. And I'm glad that you're a living example of that and you are willing to come on the podcast and talk here about it because I obviously can't talk about it yet because I'm not 60, but I'm going to have the same mindset you're having right now. It's so good.
Good. It's the best. It really is. Hey, on The Golden Bachelor, I would be one of the younger chicks, just saying.
Yes, right?
So there's so much to come. It really is. I am so incredibly excited about where my life is going and who I am in it and just all the things that you taught me that I have such a toolbox. Like when I start to get bored or something pops up and I just go back and I look at I'm just staying so much more curious and compassionate and just looking at even the most mundane things so differently. So it's a blessing that I have to thank you for. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I have loved being a part of your journey. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with the world. I know it's going to be so, so helpful for those struggling with heartbreak. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we pop off?
I don't think so. Maybe just, if anyone out there is on the fence about joining the program, if you're one of those people, you've been thinking about it, I'd just like to say for me that it was the biggest gift that I've ever given myself. So,
I could cry hearing that.
Yeah, I'm going to start to tear up. And there's just not enough time to even express all the different ways that it's impacted me. But yeah, no, it is absolutely the biggest gift I've ever given myself. So
I love that. Oh, I love you so much, Stephanie. I hope you stay in contact with me. You have to let me know how things go and continues. And I hope to see you on The Golden Bachelor one day. I hope to be like, that's Stephanie.
I love it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you'd like to learn how to fast forward getting over your ex without spending months or years feeling angry, jealous, or unlovable, I would love to personally invite you to participate in our free on-demand video training where we share 3 mind-blowing moments that will forever change your experience with your breakup or divorce. Come check it out at breakupcoachdorothy.com.